want to have a good conversation here, enough time for all the fun. So welcome, Starbucks alumni, current partners, and all of our friends. We are thrilled you are here with us today, celebrating our third annual Inspired Stories event. This year, we're featuring Alumni Authors, incredible alumni who, along the way, have written books about their journeys and their lives. My name is Marie Gill, and I'm the executive director of this fantastic organization. But before I introduce the moderator for this evening's event, I want to give you a little bit of housekeeping for the event and some insight about our organization. So we encourage each of you to keep your mics muted if you don't mind, but please, we want to hear your thoughts. We want comments. We want you to share via the chat function. We have a team who will be supporting the distribution of your comments to the panel directly. As a reminder, this event is being recorded so that we can offer it to the many partners and alumni who are in different time zones and different countries around the world. The Green Apron Alliance has been an official nonprofit alumni member organization for the Starbucks Coffee Company since 2019. Our members represent the whole of the Starbucks ecosystem. Anyone who's ever worked for Starbucks, collected a check, you're welcome to join us here. Today, we represent over 20 countries, and we have over 2,000 active members with another 10,000 alumni connecting with us on our various social media channels. Together, we offer support for each other and our communities and the businesses that we've founded, led, and the mentorship that we provide and the servant leadership that we know so well. Our mission is very straightforward. We are here to help all alumni achieve their greatest good. And with that, it's time to introduce someone who has proven to us all that achieving your greatest good can look so darn easy. Aimee Johnson is a senior marketing executive with over 30 years of experience in consumer packaged goods, retail, and technology, driving innovation, growth, scale, and profitability, and most importantly, customer love. As Chief Marketing Officer for Zillow Group, Aimee is responsible for driving brand experiences, growing national brand awareness and down funnel conversions, impactful content, meaningful customer insights, and integrated campaigns and marketing at the digitally native real estate company Zillow. Prior to Zillow, where many of us learned to love her, Aimee was the SVP of Starbucks Digital Experiences and Innovation, running Starbucks loyalty program, mobile pay, Starbucks card, personalization, and analytics. And before that, where I first saw her, she was in beverage, coffee innovation, and Tazo tea. Today, she lives in Seattle with her husband, Will, and two daughters, Micah and Sienna. Aimee's favorite coffee beverage, because we all have to know this for later, is Casi Cielo, brewed at home with steamed milk. I am very, very proud that Aimee is such a rock star GAA member and a friend. So Aimee, welcome. Thank you for joining us today, and please take it away.
Oh, thanks so much, Maria. Welcome, everyone. I'm super honored to be here moderating this fantastic panel. And it's so fun to see people. I feel like, I don't know if you guys, and I grew up in the Northeast, and we had this TV show called Romper Room. And she would hold up, it looked like a magnifying glass, and she'd say, I see Christine and Major and Jennifer. And you really felt honored whenever she mentioned your name. So anyway, I'm holding up my magnifying glass, looking at y'all, saying hi. And seeing y'all made me remember like just having random coffee chats, right? Sitting in that random purple chair that seemed to move around the SSC for a while. So proud to be here with everybody today. The thing I loved about Starbucks is how partners are all there for each other, right? Even post Starbucks, and that you can see that right here, right now. And some of the folks I'm speaking with today didn't get to know each other until after they started writing their own books. So this is super cool, and this is how the network works. So let's get into it. We're going to talk about all the authors, their books, their learnings, their experiences, and maybe a Starbucks story or two will sneak in. So I'm going to ask each of you, and Christine, going to throw it to you first. Say when you were at Starbucks, what was your role, And if you can name both one key Starbucks, that was amazing that you learned, and one key Starbucks, never do that again. What would those two be? So are you thinking? I'll throw mine in. My I will always and forever do was so amazing are all the handwritten notes senior leaders used to drop from Oren to Jim Donald to everybody. It was just like, I didn't know they knew who I was. And I would receive a handwritten birthday note with information about me. And it was just like so cool. And I still do that to the day. The flip side, the never again, is being convinced that activation means getting 100 people to sign off on something before acting on it. And there were probably another 10 that I didn't realize were required to sign off. So now it's like act, don't wait. So moving on. So Christine, take it away.
Hey, everybody. It's so great to see so many familiar faces. Thrilled to be here today with this awesome panel here and moderator, Aimee. I started in Starbucks in 1989. Yes, I know some of you probably weren't even born yet. Worked as a barista. And when I left in 2017, I was a vice president in operations services. Key Starbucks amazing that I will forever take with me is just the value of having a ritual in the workplace when you're convening teams. At Starbucks, obviously, is unique and unprecedented as the coffee tasting, but trying to find equivalents to that in other organizations is really important, bringing people together. The never, I don't think I've used this word since I left Starbucks, but use the word socialization of an initiative or an idea. Time to socialize this. I've let go of that when I left Starbucks. I will flip it over to Nancy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nancy Richardson, and I was at Starbucks from at the SSC from 2006 to 2010. But I did start as a barista at the Mercer Island drive-thru prior to that, and kind of, grew my way up through the ranks, starting as an intern at the SSC and then on to be a digital marketing manager and led the world-class customer service initiative. My favorite coffee drink is a grande Americano misto with oat milk. And I would say one of my biggest learnings, especially being a marketer, is I remember Howard Schultz saying, paid media is not a winning strategy. And that has stuck with me throughout my entire career, that we're in the people business serving coffee. And I think even now it's a very simple phrase, but reminding myself it's all about people at the end of the day. My biggest learning is, coming in as an intern, being such a know-it-all, coming right from college, telling off your VP and trying to outsmart them is probably not the best thing you could do. So, just having a little humility when you're at that phase in your career and just hunker down and pay to learn. I'll hand it off to Joe.
All right, thank you. I'm Joe Thornton. I worked for Starbucks for 11 years from 2006 to 2017. And before I go any further, I have to do two shout outs that people see on the screen. Bob Champagne. Bob, I haven't seen you in so long. That's crazy. I'm glad you're on. And Trisha Williams. I haven't seen you since I left the building. Great to see you guys. And so in my journey at Starbucks, I came in as a regional director in 2006, left as DSVP in 2017. Favorite coffee, I'll say to do coffee tastings was always espresso roast. The history of it speaks for itself. A daily drink is still a decaf grande vanilla Americano. The most important thing I took from Starbucks, actually from an experience perspective, was the coffee tastings. Some of you know I have a coffee passport that has about 1,400 coffee tastings in it. And just incredible stories when I look at the names and the experiences over the years. And similar to Christine, particularly if you're currently at Starbucks still, I would just say stay out of the building, stay in the field. So much better there. I mean, I worked in the SSC and I drove myself crazy. So there you go. All right, I'm going to kick it over to Mikaela.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here with Christine today. My name is Mikaela Kiner. I was in Partner Resources. I was a Partner Resource Manager at the SSC 2005 to 6. I have been a mocha drinker all my life and converted to the oat milk. Love the oat milk and the Oatly. I came from Microsoft. So I came to Starbucks from 7 years at Microsoft, a little bit of a different company culture. And the thing I learned that I really kept, I started by calling it fluff, but it was actually like being nice at the beginning and end of every email. So at Microsoft, you'd just be like, do this. And at Starbucks, hello, how are you? And you go, maybe you could do this for me. And then you'd say something nice again. And I was like, oh, I really like that niceness. Definitely something I've taken with me. In terms of what not to do, I would say voicemails. I remember when I was new and one of my managers that I worked with wanted to give someone a raise. And I sent him a proposal and email about how to do it. And he waited like 2 weeks. And then he left me this really lengthy voicemail about what he wanted to do. And I thought, well, no, you could have just walked by or called me and it would have gone super fast. So not a fan of the voicemails.
Great. All right. Christine, over to you. Can you give us a quick synopsis of your book in case people haven't seen it? It just came out. Fantastic. You should randomly just flash it during the conversation. Quick synopsis, and then talk about what inspired you to write your book and what was the value to you personally in writing the book, and were those the same or different?
Yeah, thanks, Aimee. By the way, it's pre-order, so it's not officially out, but it is going to be out soon. And I forgot to mention my favorite coffee. So for the last 30 years or so, I enjoy French press Cafe Verona pretty much every morning. So some things just don't change. And I'm fortunate that I get to still have my mark out, which is a luxury that I'm grateful for. But the book is it's a memoir. So it's a story about my life, and the anchors of it are from when I started at Starbucks and when I left Starbucks. So Starbucks is the through line, but there are aspects of the story and my life that are certainly outside of my Starbucks experience, but there is Starbucks stories and histories in it, but it's really about my own growth and evolution as a woman, a leader, a mom, a human. There's a lot of themes around perseverance and taking an unconventional path and not being wrapped up in the shoulds of life and really overcoming hardships and finding who I am and all that and what's important to me. So I'm a little nervous about it getting out there only because it really exposes me and my life. But if you go back to my purpose and what motivated me, inspired me to do this, is it actually, the idea was sparked on a long run. Some of you know, I've become a distance runner over the last 5 to 10 years or so. And one of my running friends, I was telling him the story about my career, and he had shocked. He'd never met anybody who'd been a part-time hourly person who'd risen to the ranks of an executive in one company. And he's like, you should write a book someday and you should call it From Barista to Boardroom. And I was like, who would want to read that and why? And I'm not a writer. And I went to all these places of like, why that was a terrible idea. Plus I don't have time, all that kind of thing. But it just sat with me. And as I started kind of sharing little tidbits through the next couple of years with different people, realizing that there could be a lot of value to help other people, particularly women, as they're navigating through their career choices and the evolution of themselves as a leader and becoming a mom and dealing with a lot of things that life brings your way and working through those. And so when I really started getting clear on like what inspired me after that conversation was, if I could help one person, literally just one person. If I get an email from somebody who's read it and says, you have helped me by sharing your story, I will honestly feel like I've served my purpose and I can like close shop and move on. But if I could help one person by sharing my story, then I will have achieved my higher calling. The other piece that was, I wanted to learn to do something new. And that's a big theme in my book, is constantly challenged and taking on new things. And I never considered myself a writer. I'm really good at bullet points and I'm really good at PowerPoints. But if I could actually learn a new skill, then it was a worthy journey for me. So that's a little bit what it's about. So I look forward to hearing people's feedback. I do want to do a quick thank you to, I see Christine Day's on here and Joe Thornton, and there might be others, but they're two of the people that graciously read an advanced copy to give me their thoughts. And it really meant a lot to me for you both to take the time to do that. So back to you, Aimee.
Oh, thanks, Christine. Mikaela, can you give us a quick synopsis of your book too? Because again, all of you are going to do this, so prepare. And tell us, did you always know you were going to be an author? And maybe this is some of the theme that we're going to be hearing, but was it completely different than things you've done in the past? So you talked a little bit about your journey with Starbucks, but was it different? Did you have a feeling you had to reinvent yourself? Like it had to be that big if you did feel like you needed to change, or did you feel like it was in flow? And then how did you end up finishing?
Yeah, great. Thank you. My book is called Female Firebrands, and it is written for both mid-career professional women, also younger women in the workplace. And it's really to help us as women take control and be successful at work. And sometimes we encounter difficult situations, inappropriate comments, we're passed over for a promotion, et cetera. I don't have to tell you all the things that happen. What I really want to do is to empower women individually to say, okay, when I'm interrupted in a meeting or when I overhear an inappropriate remark, how can I be ready and what can I do in the moment versus waiting and freezing and not knowing what to say, or versus, people don't want to, I'm in HR. So when people are comfortable going to HR, I think that's fantastic, but people also don't want to have to turn to HR every time some of these things happen, right? We just want to be able to take control and resolve it ourselves so that we can move on. So that's really who the book is for. Very similar to Christine. It's almost uncanny. I had the same goal. I thought if one person, can use this book as a tool or benefits from the stories that are in the book, that's amazing. The book is based on the stories and journeys of 13 professional women, including founders, CEOs, social impact, and nonprofit leaders. And so I really wanted to talk to and learn from a diversity of women and get their stories and experiences. Funny enough, I wanted to be a writer when I was 9 years old. I shared this with the group the other day. I illustrated some not very fabulous books at age 9, and I did send them out to publishers. Found the stack of rejection letters in a box very recently. And what was really kind was that in addition to the form letter, people wrote me really nice notes like, keep going and great that you're, trying to do this. So I did have that early passion and tried to pursue creative writing in college, wasn't very successful, and so got away from it for a very long time, but came back around sort of midway into my professional career and journey, and that idea stuck with me. And it was really then about waiting for like, what is the thing, what is the calling that I want to write about? And I talk about this in the book, sort of the moment after I gave a presentation with a number of other women. And the women from the audience each sort of came up to whoever had resonated most with them and wanted to seek out their advice. That was kind of my aha moment where I thought, okay, there's really power in women's stories. And so how can I tap into that? I don't feel like I reinvented myself to write the book, but it's more like having written a book reinvented me. I know we'll probably get to this later, but it's sort of like that. Perception is different. The people I get to meet, events I get to participate in, like this one, getting to meet other authors and aspiring authors. So I feel like it's really opened not just doors professionally, but it's opened a lot of opportunities and relationships, which I am so grateful. And I would not have anticipated that at all when I set out to write.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I wonder, does it tie back to, or did you feel, I think that there's a lot of doors that open at Starbucks because you see so many people, right? It's operation, you see people day to day, you see lots of people. How is it a little different for you in writing and how that opened the door for you?
I'm sorry, I thought you were moving on. So how was writing the book different than the sort of day-to-day networking opportunities?
Yeah.
I think I believe in that law of attraction. So people who are interested in the topic, either, they like what I've written about, or maybe they want to learn more. So I also included tips and checklists for male advocates, because I feel like there's such an important part of this conversation. And I think that did create an opening for men to sometimes come to me and say, gosh, like, I don't really know how to enter those conversations, or I don't know how to be a great advocate. And so, it maybe enabled conversations that might not have happened otherwise. I mean, in fact, even interviewing the women who were in the book, and some I didn't know, but some are women I'd known for years. But I had never necessarily sat down and had this really deep 1 hour or more conversation where I was like, what are all the horrible things that happened to you at work? And like, how did you deal with them? And what are your strengths as a female founder? And so even those people are like, this is a great conversation. And I want to turn the tables on you and ask you these questions, right? Because I don't know how your answers to these questions. So I think it's just a different kind of dialogue. Mm-hmm. And also the introductions, like, I don't think Christine and I met specifically because she was writing a book, but it was certainly an affinity. And I do get a lot of emails that are like, and it's usually a woman, hey, my friend is writing or has written or wants to figure out something about publishing. And, can she talk to you for 15 minutes? And I always say yes, because that's how I meet such amazing people.
Oh, great. Thanks. Nancy, over to you. Quick synopsis of your book, please, before you start. And the question is interesting, tied to maybe the you didn't want to keep doing, which was the intern vice president story you said at the beginning. But what was the biggest thing, like, you're like totally glad you didn't know about publishing before you got into it and finished writing your books? I know, like the editing you'd think is less than writing, but what are some of the things you learned about the writing process yourself that kind of surprised you but got you through?
Yeah, great question. Well, shout out to Christine Day, because I see her in the audience as well. She's one of my biggest mentors. And, my book is called Work Freely. And my number one value is freedom. And why I wrote the book is because I've actually been very fortunate from my beginnings at Starbucks through to a small company I left Starbucks for called Lululemon. And I was hoping it would be a success. Got a lot of coaching there from Christine and others, and all the way through my career, even to now. And, I wrote the book because I too coach people as well. And it's one of my greatest passions and the thing that is so fulfilling to see people thrive in their lives. And so I often was asked, like, oh, what was that coaching technique? Or what was that story you told at that team meeting? And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to put it into a book. And at the end of each book, or at the end of each chapter, I'm going to have the coaching that I got during that time period of my life. And so it's kind of written almost like a workbook where you can read it over and over again, depending on what you happen to be going through in your life. You can skip around to different chapters. And every time you read it, the chapter will sound different because you're going through something different in your life. It's written for everyone, anyone who's looking to build their career, manage their life, manage their health, manage their finances, all the things. And there's challenges, as you're doing that. So to answer your question, I think one of the biggest things that surprised me was when I started writing it, I went, oh, this will be easy. It's about my life. It's about my coaching, all the things. And it'll take me like 3 months. 3 years later, I finally published the book. A couple things that I think surprised me was actually how hard it was to write, because I had all the stories in my head, but it was really hard to get down on paper. And I'm not a writer, by trade. And someone gave me the advice, just write. Like, stop editing as you're writing, just get it down, write it, then go back and edit it. And so that really helped. The other thing that I did is I have a co-author. Her name is Rochelle Davidson. And I got her on board because she was a big factor in my coaching as well. And so she wrote the coaching component to each one of my chapters. And that was very, I call it therapeutic. It was almost like therapy writing this book. So that surprised me. And then the final thing is just, I think we're all our biggest critics, in everything that we do. And for me, I got halfway through the book and wanted to quit because I kind of was like, who am I? Who would ever want to listen to something I write? And very similar to Christine, I mean, it's like, if I could help one person or if somebody picks up this book and it helps them in their life, that was my why. And once I got clear on my why, it was an easier path to finishing the book.
Yeah, being focused on your purpose. So many service. It's like in service. I love the theme. And Joe, obviously a quick synopsis of your book. I'm looking at the books and getting a feel for how y'all are writing. It did not surprise me that a review of your book was Joe has the gift of sharing leadership lessons through powerful storytelling. I remember that very much working with you, Joe. Always great story that led to an outcome that led you to think, feel, or do something differently. And at Starbucks, you really do learn the importance of telling great storytelling, right? I think when you're a kid, and I have a 7 and a 9-year-old, they live in storytelling, right? The Legos, and they pull them apart, and there's a Dragon Barbie Lego that's doing something over here with an egg cart. I don't know, interesting. And you forget that, right, when you're young. What was an early experience that you learned language had power? And how did that influence how you use storytelling to communicate today?
Yeah, 2 things. I'll start by touching on the books. I actually wrote 2 in the last 2 years. And the first one was, it inspired me to write as I was carrying around all these stories for years and years. And I wanted to write. I knew that at some point I had more than a blog's worth and I needed to do something with it. And the connection around stories is that I don't think people would believe some of the things that other people have lived through, right? We only see the exterior. We see the quote unquote finished product or the next level up. And you kind of forget that people have gone through different experiences. And so, when I left Starbucks, then went to Jamba Juice, left that COO job, I took off a year. Like, this is the window. This is the opportunity for me to write. And the irony of ironies, by the way, is that I was sitting in my house in Austin. I had this great, at the time, home office. No one's home. Perfect opportunity to write. Complete writer's block. I literally packed up, went and sat in the middle of a crowded Starbucks with my headphones on, and it just flowed. And that's how I ended up writing the book, sitting in the middle of a crowded Starbucks, the irony of all. But the first book, The Power of Or, the originating thought for that book is that I'd worked with consultants many years ago before Starbucks, and we had this group that came in. They always talked about the power of and. You can do this and that. And it was just this very slick presentation to the executive team. And I just remember walking out saying, well, that's bullshit. I mean, no one lives like that, right? I mean, so it's a book about pragmatism, right? If you've got, enough money to pay 2 bills, but you have 3, you got decisions to make. You got 2 kids with events at the same time. You got to choose which one you go to. And we're making those trade-offs every single day in our personal life. Yet we get to work and there's a strategic plan the size of War and Peace that we're trying to accomplish, right? And just this disconnect between the reality of personal life and sometimes the lack of reality in the business world. And so it's a little bit of both. Hopefully there's something in there to think about how you live your personal life and kind of breaking through things like, multitasking and all the ills of that. Or my favorite chapter in that book was saying no, the need for us in our lives to say no. So I wrote that book. I published it right before I started HMS Host last year, but I was already 40% into writing the second book, The Hostility of Change, which recently came out in February. And it's a book about change. And it had nothing to do with the pandemic. It had nothing to do with working at HMS Host the first year. It's just about change, and it transcends everything we do in our life. But both books are about storytelling, back to your original question. And what I learned at an early age is that storytelling was powerful for me because I grew up where I had 2 older sisters and I literally had no one to talk to. I mean, this isn't a sad story, but I just, it was a different experience for me. I really had to live on imagination. And then when I realized when you get to be an adult, we replace that all with, rationale and logic and practicality and all the boring stuff. And, we lose that imagination. And so much of what the most impactful leaders I've seen be able to do is to tell a story, to connect something they've experienced in a way they can pass on to someone else. So for me, that was a lot of what's in the book. I mean, sure, there's tactics and strategies for both the concepts of each book, but that's boring stuff, right? You got to put in stories and things that people are really interested in that they can take on their journey.
Yeah, I always think about the story as like the vanilla milkshake and the learning as the spinach, that goes in.
Ah,
So you can you want to drink the milkshake, but don't tell me about the goodness. Yeah, being at a tech company now, it's really different because it's like, what's the number? It's not quite that bad, but it is like learning to tell stories with numbers. You can actually move things faster too, because there's emotion everywhere we live, right? The heart is big enough to hold love for everyone. And once you are okay with being in that space for empathy and understanding somebody else, it's you get a lot more reaction back to people you're working with.
And Aimee, I'll say one more
Sure.
thing quickly before you move on, and it ties to what Nancy said about just get it on paper. One of the things that really helped me, especially in the second book where, I'm working now, I have a full-time job, writing's a little harder, and trying to find that space and time is, and this seems like the most obvious thing, but using your dictation on your computer, right? Instead of writing, you can speak fast and you can write and just say it, just hit the button. And before you know it, there's 3 or 4 pages. And to Nancy's point, you edit that stuff later, but you get the idea, the concept in writing, and you'll be amazed at how much, you'll retain when you go back because you said it in your voice, in your way.
Yeah. So to any of you then, what you've gotten stuck, you mentioned a few of you have gotten stuck. What are some unsticky things you do?
Take a break. For me, just take a break. Step away, find something that inspires me.
Yeah, because when you said, Aimee, does it, we're thinking about one of our previous conversations, does it excite you? Does it energize you or exhaust you? And the answer is both. But I think to Christine's point, there were times where I'm just like, why am I doing this to myself? Just push away from it. The other piece of advice I got, and it was writing the first book. Well, it was writing the first book. And it was because I had been off for so long. I was off 16 months from work, and I had become leisurely about everything, including writing the book. And a friend of mine said, you got to treat it like a job and clock in and out, and I was putting in 2.5 hours a day. And when I put in 5, it was amazing how much greater the quality of the book became.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget, and being on the creative side, they're like, oh no, routine bad. Ugh, I don't, for someone creative, hemming in at least, so you have to be in charge of your space in the moment you need to be creative is like the best thing ever, I think, to have a routine that you could step into, because that's something and then you feel comfortable with. So if you're feeling a block, could be something that's kind of freeing. Energize or exhaust? Who else? Did you guys are like every day, awesome sauce?
Well, I'll go. I mean, my experience, so I was working full-time, running my business, and then have 2 teenagers. And so I wrote, I mostly wrote on weekends, and I mostly got up at like, 5 a.m. or right on the weekend. I mean, I might do a little bit in the evening, but there just wasn't a lot of time there. And it was really energizing. I do think editing is hard. I even enjoy editing. Like I personally enjoy editing what other people write. I think it was when it would get
You're
down
going to get a
to,
bunch of calls,
Yeah, no, I really,
okay.
I think in my other life, I should have been an editor. So I took a different path, but it was the thing that was the detail. Like, I mean, this sticks with me so much. I had a colleague, somebody hit on her at work, and she turned to him and she said, I'm going to give you 20 seconds to take that back. That was her, how she dealt with it, which I thought was powerful. Well, then the editor's like, in one place it says 20 and in a different place it says 30. And then which is it? It needs to be consistent. And that's the thing where I'm like, I know you're right. Yes, it has to be accurate and it has to be consistent. But the mind numbingness of like finding the original quote and then going in. And so those were the things where I'd find that I was procrastinating. And it was the pure need for like quality that would drive me like, that just the book isn't going to be good until I fix some of these little, niggling issues. But I was super energized throughout the process. But I think it's one of those things, your adrenaline is so high. And I was the person who came off it like, I'm going to write another book. I even started a Google Doc with some notes. And now I'm here, 1.5 years later. And I'm like, yeah, maybe in 3 to 5 years, I'm going to write another book. Like now that the high has come down. And I look back and it was so much work. And I'm like, how did I even plow through? Right. But I think if, you're passionate about it, everybody talked about their purpose. that purpose just drives you and the fatigue sets in later, or that was my experience.
I heard from a writer once, is the easiest next book is the workbook for the first book. So, it takes such thick skin, I would imagine. I have grand ideas to do things I never do. And it takes a lot of tenacity and thick skin. And you could always look at yourself and be like, I'm not so-and-so, like for me in marketing, Seth Gooden, he's a marketer, like, oh, and who am I to write a book, right? Like, who's going to listen to me? How did you guys, I don't know if any of you felt that as well, if you had to get over it, or if you're like, yes, that's me, and I'm the person writing the book. How did you deal with critics or people that were like, the way that you said this, some people don't have the right to even be critics that way. So how did you work through that?
Aimee, I'll jump in. All I will say is that every piece of feedback that I've had from each book was valuable. Like, there hasn't been a piece of criticism that wasn't spot on. It's just something I completely missed. And I'll give you a perfect example, being very vulnerable. The second book came out in February. My brother was the first one to read it, literally, and he loved the book. I mean, he was checking in with me after every chapter, and at the end of it, he said, the only thing is you use way too many pronouns, right? And I mean, I went back and flipped through, and I'm like, he is right. Like, how did I miss this? And it's not even being thick-skinned. It's just, being real with yourself, right? As you go through this process, and if you have an ego, this isn't really the thing for you, because the book isn't going to be for everyone, right? It's you hope it is for someone, and maybe more than one person, but it's not going to be for everyone. And I do think you have to think about why people, I mean, you're so close to this, right? You've written it. We talked about this as authors 1,000 times. You've read it. Like, I'm sick of my book by the time you publish it, right? You don't want to edit it anymore. But for someone else to read it for the first time, they don't really know your perspective that you came from in writing it. And so if you didn't go deep enough, sometimes that's the feedback you get, and you just got to own it.
Nancy, how do you coaching, like, you had two people writing it. Fascinating. And so I'm assuming you still talk to each other and to others that have helped you.
The book is about myself and my personal stories, and then my co-author wrote the coaching. So I think it was more myself putting, my stories out there. And midway through, I just got scared. I got scared. I'm like, I don't know if I want everybody to know this about me. I don't know if I want my mom reading this chapter. I don't know if I should mention this name. And I mean, it kind of gets back to people, like having your people around you to help push you through, and those people you trust, because you are going to be your biggest critic. You're going to find all the 10 different reasons why you just shouldn't do this and why you're not good enough. And so I actually, just a small thing, but I wrote mine in Google Docs. And so that way it made it really easy. I could just share the link. Hey, so-and-so, can you check out this chapter? Or can you check out this chapter? And those little bits of feedback or comment or positive affirmations helped me to just be like, okay, I can do this. I'll write one more paragraph, or I'll write one more chapter, and just keep going. And so that really helped me get through it.
Great. Okay, I happen to be the queen of Easter eggs. I love them for whatever reason. So, do any of you have, or will admit to having, hidden any secrets in your books that only a few people will find?
The only thing I'll say, Aimee, is I wasn't that clever. I wasn't that clever. I just want the message that I'm trying to convey to get through. Forget about trying to be, cute. Like, just hopefully people understand what I'm saying.
Fair.
So mine might be, it's almost a little bit backhanded, but I think for anyone who's planning to write and doesn't want to call out or name individuals where there's a negative story or a negative experience, I didn't name any individuals when I shared those stories. And then my thought was, well, if those people read the book and they're self-aware, they will recognize themselves. However, given the behaviors that I'm describing, my bet is that they are not self-aware, and they'll read it like they will actually probably not recognize themselves. So that was kind of how I got away with that one. I want to go back to your other one about that sort of almost imposter syndrome, like who would read my book. So I told the stories of 13 amazing women, right? So I felt like, well, I kind of got a miss on that because I shared their stories, but I still have the imposter syndrome. Like the other day, I was like, well, Christine wrote a memoir. I couldn't write a memoir because who'd want to read my memoir? So I think it's still there. That's still really raw for me. Like, I don't know that I'd have the confidence to write a memoir, but I found something that I did have the confidence to write.
I have an Easter egg in mine. It's chapter 7. It's called A Decent Proposal. And that's my Starbucks chapter. So the 47 people on this. But like Mikaela, I had to take all the names out and everybody. So for the 47 of you who are on this call, when you read that chapter, that's my Starbucks.
Okay, so we have to put something in the follow-up note that goes to everybody, how to get back to Nancy solely. So y'all have a challenge out there to find if you know or can find it. That's awesome.
I will tell you, Aimee, as I was reading Christine's book, which I love the book. I mean, seriously, you gotta buy her book. It's the Starbucks story you need to read. And because she did pseudo names, I was trying to guess who is that? I know who that person is. Like, no, you don't. That's not really their name. I did it throughout the whole book, So it's
accurate. 50%.
Gossip, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves good gossip. So I was completely wrong on most of them, but it was fun guessing. But I did get advice, by the way, at one point that if you do use real names, whether it's good or bad, just be careful because they're memorialized forever. I mean, these have to be people of the highest quality, the highest, et cetera, that you feel like you could live in, that name forever in your book.
I just adding on to that, when I was first getting started, Howard Behar gave me some advice because it's, with a memoir, it's my story, it's my experience. And part of sharing your story and experience is all the highlights, but also the lowlights, right? That's what makes it relatable and understandable. But I also wanted to figure out, how do I share the highlights and the lowlights in a way that's respectful? And one of the things he said to me was, praise in public, criticize in private. And so what I did is I kept the names in there that were for positive experiences. And then I did create pseudonyms for those that were not. And even when Joe emailed me guessing who it was, I said, I'm going to call you. I'm not even going to put this in writing. Yeah. And it's not about that person. It's about my experience and what I learned from that experience, how I grew from that experience, how that shaped who I am as a human and as a leader. That's what the takeaway should be versus this person was a jerk. Because there are a few of those stories in there. But it's how did I do with that and how did I grow and learn from that?
All right. So there was we have just a nanosecond left. I have one question of thumbs up, thumbs down from somebody in the audience, and not thumbs up. So yes and no. Yes is up, no is down. No judging, actually. Sound like a judging question. They're curious if any of the panelists make it a point not to read other books or the writing. So you do not read other books, thumbs up, and you don't not. Oh, that's a hard one. Do you make it a practice to not read books? Yes, while you're writing, or no? No. So you still read other things while you're, Joe, maybe? You don't read other books. Yeah, right. Great. And then so on our way out, I think it'd be great if you have maybe to share with the audience, name the book on your nightstand that you are currently thrilled with reading.
Well, this is easy because I'm reading my own. and not because I'm full
opening for Christine.
Because I just got it on Monday. It's the first time I've had the physical form factor. And so I'm on chapter 3. But if you look on my nightstand, I actually have one of Joe's books right here that I've been reading as on breaks during the work day.
Nice.
So I have to say about real quick, because Christine won't say it. So she is number what? 3?
Well, for the food and beverage category, it's number 3 of new releases as of just a little bit ago. So
that's awesome.
Super exciting.
So Aimee, on my nightstand, well, I just finished, of course, reading Baristas of Boardroom, a few weeks ago. But next up is Major Cohen's book. I see Major out there. I need literally and figuratively a coffee fix, and I need some stories around coffee. So no one better to go to than Major. So I have it. That's next up, Major.
Right.
Mine it's called A Cell Phone.
Like what book?
TikTok, actually, and I don't anymore because all I do is TikTok before I go to sleep. So
Love it.
Oh, well, I'm obsessed with Costa Rica, and I'm heading down there again at the end of the month and hope to semi-retire there one day. And so I just got a book in the mail yesterday called The Adventurer's Son. That's a true story. I won't give it away, but I heard about it on NPR. It sounded fascinating. So I'm about to crack that open this evening.
Oh, enjoy. I have The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. So it's like popcorn marketing. It's fantastic. And the book talks about how you can make such an impact on customers and relationships just by knowing the right moments to celebrate with people around you. And so I'm just going to end with that because I think that's like our shtick, right? All of us are connected by leading from the heart and really being there for our customers and finding those moments that matter. So congratulations to all the authors. So exciting. Yay. Over to you, Marie.
Awesome. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. That was really great. And Aimee, you have missed your calling on being a good moderator. So I think we're going to put you on the road and send you out. This is great. I hope for many of you who might not have necessarily had Starbucks as part of your past, and there are a handful of you on here, so welcome. But I hope you see that this Starbucks was a wonderful place for all of us to learn from each other, to gather some really incredible life lessons, some really rich understanding of the world around us. But more importantly, in our roles as alumni, as people who have Starbucks in our past, it's a fantastic way for us to continue that rich storytelling and the narrative of, sharing what we've learned and helping to lift each other up. And so sticking with our mission of helping each of us achieve our greatest good, I hope tonight and this afternoon helped each of you find a little something that you can carry forward with you. And the biggest thing we can all do for the world and our community around us is to reach out, continue telling these stories, continue lifting each other up. And together with, the power of all of us together, we can do so much. So thank you so much for joining us. This will be recorded, this will be shared, and we will very much be sending each of you the links on how to get all these fantastic books and to get more involved with Green Apron. So thank you and have a lovely rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.